Namco's Wagyan Paradise for the Super Famicom is a bubbly, cheery splendor of a platformer that surprises in more ways than one. As a matter of fact, it's probably a better game than it has any right to be, seeing as it was aimed at young children, but the good people at Namco knew what they were doing and made a pretty enjoyable little platformer. It seems the Great Deku Tree is stuck in Wagyan Land and needs your help. Also, an army of underground creatures may be invading your land or something like that. But let's be honest, it doesn't really matter. What does matter is how well this game plays. The controls are simple: B jumps, holding down B while in the air gives you some extra hang time, and Y shoots. Controls are nice and responsive, making the platforming very satisfying and easygoing. Never did I feel there was an unfair death on the part of the controls. It was usually me getting cocky and undershooting my jump or missing my shot and colliding with an enemy. Throughout the variety of levels, the only time the controls suffer are during the flying sections where they get a bit clunky. Speaking of levels, there's a lot of them, 29 in total, all of which brandish exuberant pastel colors that grab the player's eye. Both foregrounds and backgrounds are cheerishly detailed in a cutesy, bubbly manner that showcase the graphics of the SNES. Little details like the Deku Tree from the overworld screen being visible during the airship levels near the end of the game, to the different lighting effects on your character in certain levels like the volcano, the ice world, the crystal cave, and more showcase that a lot of tender love and care went into this game. What's even more surprising are some of the well thought out level gimmicks. For example, in the ice stage, your roar freezes, which you'll need to utilize to make certain jumps. This actually reminds me a lot of a stage out of one of my favorite games, Go Super Makami. In the base levels, you have to shoot your roar into pipes which make bubbles that act as platforms to get across large gaps, while in other levels you have to stun enemies and use them as platforms. Besides your typical platforming stages, there are some levels that try to change things up, like the water levels where you have to swim and dodge enemies, the downhill jam levels, and a few others like this jetpack level that auto-scrolls in different directions while you avoid spikes. The variety is well maintained across the 29 levels, and if that's not enough variety, then that's where the minigames come in. There are only 3, but each one is a nice distraction, and I would be lying if I said I didn't enjoy the bowling minigame. You are treated to quite a lot of cutscenes between levels, most of which are just your character moving along the overworld, but there are some legitimate cutscenes throughout which also look great, like the giant robot crossing Wagyan Land and the end cutscene, which is pretty funny. On top of all of the great graphics and fun platforming, it also has a pretty great soundtrack, consisting of many moods like jaunty and upbeat, wacky and adventurous, and laid back and ambient. Lots of lush, wavy synth pads, aquatic bells, and chimes make their way into songs, but so do synthesized harmonicas, congos, and strings. On more than one occasion, some pretty dancey drum grooves and synth rhythms popped up. There are more than a few tunes that sounded almost like something you'd hear in a PlayStation game. The soundtrack is comparable to the new Super Mario Bros. OST, which is a good thing. As a matter of fact, I think I like this game's soundtrack a little bit better. I can't lie and say the soundtrack is flawless, as there are a number of forgettable and lackluster songs throughout, but there are plenty of great ones to keep things balanced. So we have great graphics, tight controls, and a pretty decent soundtrack. So what's the catch? Well, I mentioned earlier that this game was intended for young kids, so instead of having traditional boss battles, you get these minigame quizzes, which are all very simple, but some require you to know Japanese, which is a problem for me. The 2 guessing games and the word scramble literally end up being guessing games for me. On the bright side, all of the others are a cakewalk. These do put a damper on the fun and show up way more often than they should. Every 2 levels or so, be prepared to do another. But to make things easier, at this character screen, keep this number set to 3. This is asking for your age, which will affect how hard each minigame is and the number of lives you're given. Keep it low if you want to breeze through these, and sometimes they let you pass even when you fail. Namco's Wagyan series probably isn't the first thing to come to mind when the company's name is uttered, which is no surprise as none of the 10 games in the series ever left Japan. What is surprising is that Wagyan Paradise, despite being aimed at a younger audience, could be this much fun and have this much competence put into it. This would come with a high recommendation as a nice casual platformer to pick up if it weren't for the language barrier in some of the minigames. But don't let that stop you, as this game is cheap, typically 10 to 15 bucks, and there's definitely some fun to be had with this title. So next time you don't know what to play or need something easy and enjoyable, give Wagyan Paradise a shot.